Our interview this morning is with Dean M. Sponsler. Dean was born on a farm near Humiston, Iowa in May of 1919. He served in the United States Army and the Air Force during World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. His highest rank attained was E9, Chief Master Sergeant. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Dean in any way. Also in the room we have Milton Gibson, who is our videographer. This interview was conducted at Burleson, Texas on Friday, November the 12th, 2010. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress and also for Operation Remember for the city of Burleson, Texas. And with that little intro, Dean, we'll let you tell your story, sir.
Okay. My first contact with the military was I was recommended by the local American Legion and to go to attend the CMTC Citizens Military Training Camp in Fort Des Moines, Iowa. The situation on that was that if you attended four consecutive years of 30-day encampment, you could get a second lieutenant commission in the Army Reserve, Infantry Reserve. I went for the first year, and then I had nothing to go back to, so I joined the Army National Guard and went to camp with them that year. They released me that fall because I was going to still have my senior year of high school in Humiston. I graduated that year, valedictorian, my class, and started to a business college. I ended up with a degree in advanced accounting. Then I joined my old unit in the Army National Guard, and when my enlistment ran out in 40, just before the unit was activated, I got out and worked as an accountant. I worked with a firm of CPAs for a while, and then I had my own bookkeeping and tax report business. Then I was drafted in 43. I got discharged in December of 45. I was a technical sergeant E6 at that time. And started up my bookkeeping and tax report business again and joined there was a Air Force National Guard unit at a airfield about 1.5 miles from me, so I joined that. When the Korean deal came along, they activated that unit, and we went up and opened up Dow Air Force Base in Maine in 51. And in 52, we moved down to Alexandria Air Force Base, Louisiana, and opened that air base up. And I left there. While I was there, I was given a choice assignment to Saudi Arabia for a year. I came back from that to Carswell here at Fort Worth. And the only thing that happened I was in, that time they didn't have officers in the command center. There was this master sergeants had different shifts running the command center. And I was one of the shift leaders. Then the only thing there was we went to on a deployment to North Africa, and I run the radios there to communicating with the airplanes and so forth. Then we came back, and I got orders to go to Japan. And in Japan for 4.5 years, I was in charge of NCOIC of base operations. And after 4.5 years, we came back. I was supposed to go to Lake Charles, Louisiana, but my orders was changed, sent me back to Carswell. And I did the statistical analysis on the B-58. The Air Force didn't have any B-58s yet, but they were getting them, and they were running a training program on them. So I did the statistical analysis of the operations of the B-58. Then about a year later, they transferred me over to the 19th Air Division, the headquarters. And I was there for probably about 2 years before I got orders to go to the Pentagon and to the Joint Staff Command Center in the Pentagon. There we had the shift work, and each shift you work 8 hours, 4 8-hour shifts, then you're off for 24 and back out again and then when you had the morning shift, you come in at 4 in the morning to noon, but on that shift you had to brief the Joint Staff at 8 o'clock every morning. And that shift made up the briefing. And after about, I want to say 6 months, I took over as NCOIC of the enlisted men in the Joint Staff Command Center. And did that for the balance of the 4 years I was in the Pentagon. Then they were setting up the Joint Staff Command Center for Europe in Germany. And the general that had charge of that requested that I come over and help him get it set up. So I went over there and got that job for 5 years. Then I came back to the States for my last year. That was, and meantime I got a letter from the Air Force saying that my 55th birthday was coming up, and as of the end of that month I was no longer on the Air Force payroll. So that made up my mind to retire. I went back to Seymour Johnson to F4 outfit for my final year, and I retired in '74, May of '74.
That's the story?
What?
That's your story?
Yeah.
Going to stick to it?
Yep.
Okay.
Most of the stuff I did you can't talk about. You can understand working command centers and then working in the command center in the Pentagon.
I really sometimes question that because you were doing that, you were at the Pentagon in the 70s?
I got there in
late 60s?
In '68 to '73.
I'm not sure what we can't talk about that's 30 or 40 years ago, but nonetheless, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
If we go back to Iowa, before we got on camera, Dean, you were telling us about some things in Iowa. Lost both your parents at a pretty early age.
Well, my mother still lived, but she was invalid.
Okay. 6 brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
Where do you fall in that?
I'm next to the youngest.
Next to the youngest. Did you all live on the farm?
No, we moved to town because we couldn't keep up the farm.
Okay. And this was in the 30s?
No, this was in the 20s.
In the 20s. Okay.
Yeah. I had a paper route in '28 when Al Smith and Herbert Hoover were running for president.
Wow. Wow. How much did you make on that paper route? Do you remember?
I was making probably about maybe 75 cents a week.
ride your bike, or did you walk and throw the paper?
I walked.
You walked.
Yeah.
Okay. Brothers and sisters all worked, I guess. All had some kind of a job.
Well, they worked when they weren't in school.
Okay.
See, my grandfather had left some money for us, but we could only use it for school and supplies.
He was a wise man, wasn't he?
Yes and no, because
Uh,
I can understand, because there wouldn't have been any money for school if
But you yourself did very well in high school. You graduated valedictorian.
yeah.
Uh,
Matter of fact, one time they ran a check and they said that I got the highest grades in the whole school.
wow. How many kids were in the graduating class?
Not very many, 17.
17.
Yeah.
And this would have been. Now this
uh,
was in the early 30s.
I graduated in 37.
37. Okay. And you graduated 17 folks. You were the valedictorian.
Mm-hmm.
Did very well. And then, actually, before then, the American Legion recommended you for this
CMTC, yeah.
CMTC program.
Yeah.
What did you do? You might not know, but what was the recommendation based on?
I don't know.
Just
No.
citizenship?
I knew, yeah, because they probably contacted the school.
Mhm.
That would be the normal procedure, I would think.
Okay. Okay. Somewhere along the line there, you went to business school
Yeah.
and got an advanced accounting degree.
Mm-hmm.
Were you still living at home?
I lived with my sister.
Lived with your sister.
Yeah.
How'd you finance this going to school?
That's my money from my grandfather.
Ah, okay. Okay. Well, this is the part where Granddad was smart. Okay. You worked with a number of CPAs or an accounting firm.
Yeah.
Where was that, Dean?
Des Moines.
In Des Moines. Okay.
Yeah. The deal is, when you go in at that time, you had to work for a firm of CPAs for 3 years and be recommended by them before you could sit for the exam.
Okay.
They certified my statements and everything. But as a junior man, I got all the out-of-town jobs. I'd take my suitcase to work with me on Monday morning and bring it home Friday night.
Wow. Did you have a car?
Part of the time I did, but I couldn't take a car with me. I had to go by bus or.
And you worked, say, the state of Iowa?
Yeah,
Wow.
wherever they sent me.
And how old were you when you were doing this?
I was about 20.
Wow. Okay.
But my wife said that if she was going to be a widow, she was going to be one. She would be single. She wasn't. I had to either get another job or another wife. So.
When were you married, Dean?
Married in 38, July of 38.
That's while you were working with a CPA firm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was
Okay.
still in school
Okay.
just before.
Then you go with a CPA firm and you're drafted in 43.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I got out of when I was before. It was about, what did I say, 41. Well, see, I went with them, and then I had to get another job, so I got a job as an accountant with Ford Motor. Then when the war came along, Ford shut off, and so I went to work for an ammunition plant. They were setting it up.
Always in accounting.
It was in property accounting, yeah.
Okay. When you were drafted, they sent you off to basic training or boot
Well,
camp, whatever?
a little bit, yeah. What happened is I checked into the camp, basic training camp. The first day they sent me over to typing, and I hit. You see, at that time, if you were an accountant, you couldn't get through the door unless you could type and take shorthand. So they sent me over. I hit 55 words a minute perfect on the typewriter. That's the old mechanical.
Yep.
And they dictated at 60 words a minute, and I got that no problem. Then the next morning they sent me back over to the school, and they dictated at 80 words a minute, and I got that.
Wow.
And I got back to the company area, and they called me and said that they want you down at group headquarters. I went down. They said, we need a shorthand court reporter. I said, well, that's 200 words a minute, and I'm not that fast. They said, well, do you want to try it? You got a lot of long hikes coming up. You know, they sold me. So I did that for about a month. And they had set up a special developmental battalion. The men in that outfit had to be bed patients in General Hospital with combat fatigue. All the officers and all the cadre was either psychiatrists or psychologists, but they didn't have anyone that could take the case histories. So they pulled me off of court reporting to take the case histories on that deal.
Wow.
And when they finished with that, when they lasted about 6 or 8 months, they were trying to see what they could do with the men with combat fatigue. And they had got their final reports out, and I was released from that, and I went over to personnel to see what they were going to do with me. And they put me in charge of officers section of personnel. And so I worked that for about 6 weeks, and someone got the idea that they didn't want an enlisted man in charge of officers section of personnel. So they released me from that, and I went back to personnel, and I said, what do I do now? They said, well, this officer said he's already taken care of you. Well, he was the one that handled the combat loss replacements and that kind of stuff. So I said, well, he's got me lined up. I ran on to him. I said, what's the deal? And he said, well, my car is outside the officers club. Be in at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I worked for him for about 2 days, and they sent him